If you follow the practice of creating specific GPOs to address specific categories of needs, you can end up with a whole lot of policies linked at many levels of your Active Directory hierarchy. Group policy objects that control security settings are a really common place where this can happen. Systems administrators are responsible for protecting the security of the IT infrastructure. So, it's a good practice to create a very restrictive GPO that uses very secure, conservative security policies and link that to the whole domain. This gives you a secure default policy. But some users or computers might not be able to do what they need to with those very conservative policies in place. The finance department might need to use Excel macros that are disabled in your default security policy, for example. So we can create GPOs that relax some of those security settings or policies in the OUs that contain those computers or users. Another example might be that we have a group policy object that standardizes the desktop wallpaper of all computers, but we have computers that are public access kiosks that need to have a different wallpaper. In any of these cases, you can have computers or user accounts with multiple GPOs assigned to them that contradict one another by design. So what happens when there are two or more contradictory group policy objects that apply to the same computer? When computer is processing the group policy objects that apply to it, all of these policies will be applied in a specific order based on a set of precedence rules. GPOs are applied based on the containers that contain the computer and user account. GPOs that are linked to the least specific or largest container are applied first. GPOs that are linked to the most specific or smallest container are applied last. First, any GPOs linked at the AD site are applied, then any linked at the domain, and then any OUs in order from parent to child. If more than one policy tries to set the same policy or preferences, then the most specific policy wins. To see what I mean, let's look at this AD structure. As you can see my structure, I have multiple OUs. We have my IT OU, we have my sales OU, I also have my research OU. And I also have my sites in Australia, India, and North America. If you have a computer in the India site and the example.com sales computer OU, then Active Directory would apply group policy objects that are linked to the India site, the example.com domain, the sales OU, and the computers OU in that order. That's not all though. You can actually link multiple GPOs to the same container. How does AD decide which order to apply the GPOs in, if there are more than one in a container? Each container has a link order for the GPOs that are linked to it. So let's look at our sales OU. The sales OU in our example domain has a GPO for network drive mapping and a GPO for configuring network printers. The link order of each policy determines which GPO takes precedence. The highest number is the lowest ranked GPO, so its settings are applied first. Network printers, sales is applied first, and network drives, sales is applied last. If anything, the network drive policy contradicts the network printer policy, then the drives policy wins out. Let's summarize this so far. The highest numbered link order in the least specific container is applied first, and the lowest numbered link order in the most specific container is the last GPO applied. The last GPO to modify any specific setting wins. In the Group Policy Management console, we can see the precedence rules in action. I'm going to switch to the Computers OU in Group Policy Management. I can see that there's a policy linked here called Computer Security Policy. I want to increase this. By switching from the Linked Group Policy Objects tab to the Group Policy Inheritance, like so, I can see that objects in this OU will actually have quite a few policies applied. The precedence column tells us which policy will win if there are conflicting settings, and the location column tells us where the policy was linked. You might have noticed that there are no site link policy listed here. That's because you can have computers from many different AD sites in the same OU. So, site-based GPO links aren't represented in this summary. When you add all of the group policies together for a specific machine and apply precedence rules to them, we call that the resultant set of policy, or RSOP, for that machine. When you're troubleshooting group policy, you'll often compare an RSOP report, pronounced RSOP, to what you expect to be applied to that computer. There are a lot of ways to get an RSOP report. We'll use the Group Policy Management console for now, and look at the other methods when we start troubleshooting. Let's check on what group policy objects will apply when one of our sales staff logs onto their computers. I'll right-click on the Group Policy Results node in GPMC and select Group Policy Result Wizard. So let me go and do that. This wizard will walk me through generating a resultant set of policy report for the computer and user of my choice. The computer that I'm using to run this report will make a remote connection to that computer and ask it to run the report. The report will then be visible in my local GPMC. I'd like to see the RSOP when Emmett is logged into his computer, which is Emmett PC01. Let me go and do that. So I'm going to hit Next, and I'm going to search for his computer. So I'm going to hit another computer, hit Browse, and I'm going to type in Emmett PC01, and hit OK. The Group Policy Results Wizard is super simple. First, I enter Emmett PC01 as a computer that I want to run the report on. By default, the wizard will only run an RSOP report for computer configuration. Since I want to see the user configuration for Emmett 2, I'll select Display Policy Setting for him, which is actually already selected by default. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit Next, and it's going to take us to the summary of selections. And then we're going to hit Next, and to generate the report, we hit Finish. You can only select users from this list who've already logged on to this computer in the past. That's it. I'll review my selection in the summary dialog, then finish the wizard. I'm left with a new item under the Group Policy Resultant node in GPMC, and it contains a resultant set of policy report that I just requested. Great. This RSOP report contains everything that we need to understand what policies apply to a computer or user. It includes a whole lot of detail about where the computer and user are located in AD, what their security group memberships are, and more. I'm going to set that aside for the moment and focus on the setting sections of the report, which I'm going to scroll down to. This looks a lot like the information you see in the Settings tab of a GPO, but instead of only showing you the settings modified by a single GPO, you can see the combined effect of all of the applied GPOs. The winning GPO column tells you which GPO ultimately took precedence for each policy and preference. Amazing, right? Remember, I'm making a remote request from my Group Policy Management console to Emmett's PC01 to run this report. There are a bunch of reasons that this could fail to work. Emmett PC01 may be powered off. It could be disconnected from the network or have firewall rules that prevent me from running the report remotely. If I'm not a local administrator on the machine, I won't be able to run the report. In any of these cases, if I need that RSOP report for troubleshooting, I might have to run commands locally on Emmett's PC01. We'll cover additional troubleshooting techniques in a future lesson.